Hello and welcome to Beyond the Point podcast with me, Ali Christensen. I am curating the content that I wish I had had as a dancer to create strong, healthy, thriving dancers in the future. Not only am I your host and ex-professional dancer, but I own Align Fitness here in Huntington Beach, California, and I am the creator of such... Hello and welcome to Beyond the Point podcast with me, Ali Christensen. I'm curating the content I wish I had had as a dancer and creating strong, healthy, thriving dancers for the future. Not only am I your host and ex-professional dancer, but I own Align Fitness here in Huntington Beach, California, and I'm the creator of online courses for dancers such as lower body flexibility and turnout for dancers. Today, we're going to dive in a little bit into what happens when we get injured. If you have been following me on Instagram in the last couple of months, you may have seen that I recently herniated a disc in my back. This was an extremely unpleasant experience, to put it mildly. It was quite a bad back injury, and it was bad enough that it actually took me out of work for the week. And I think it took me 6 days to be able to stand up for longer than 5 minutes at a time. It was excruciating. Now, I bring this up because I know as athletes, we are going to get injured. It's what happens. Now, there are ways to avoid severe injuries, but for some of us, there are injuries that just happen. They're more acute injuries, like you get dropped or you step off a curb and sprain your ankle. Maybe you land wrong and we do something to our knee or meniscus. These are things that happened with a brunt force or something made the injury happen right away. There are other injuries that I work to avoid and why people come to me that are more wear and tear, improper use of technique, posture, all the things that then add up to an injury over time. So we spend a lot of time talking about those types of injuries, the ones that are much more avoidable, in my opinion, when you take your cross training and your health into your hands outside of the dance studio. But today, given that I have now had 2 back injuries and I had a career-ending hip injury, I thought that I would use my experiences, tell you a little bit about what I went through, ways I would change it, things I thought I did well, and maybe give a little bit of light for you guys, you parents, you dancers, that things I wish I had done better or you guys can be doing to assist through a more severe injury. So back in 2011, 2012, I tore the labrum in my hip. And I did this over time, over improper use of my body while I was dancing. Now I look back and I know that if I had trained a little bit differently, if I had been doing more cross training outside of the studio, I probably could have avoided this injury. One gigantic reason that I jumped into this line of work is because of that acknowledgement of myself that, oh my gosh, I could have done something about this and I could have been dancing longer. About 2 years ago, I hurt my back. I probably herniated a disc at that point too, for the first time. And that was a shocker. I very quickly learned that any back pain I had had as a dancer was muscular, and this was definitely in the bones, more structural. When I was dancing, I would pull my back quite a bit. Now, did that add up to maybe a herniated disc? Absolutely. Movement patterns all add up. But it was very clear to me, like, oh my goodness, what I did as a dancer whenever I would pull a back or pull muscle in my back and I would have to lay down and I felt frozen like I couldn't move. That was a pulled muscle. What I did 2 years ago and what I did a couple months ago was definitely a herniated disc. Being able to talk about your pain, to label it, to describe it is so important. I work inside of a sports medicine clinic and I hear people come in all the time that when the doctor's asking, how does it feel? They say, fine, good, bad. Guys, these aren't descriptive words. And the faster that you can describe your pain, is it prickly? Is it sharp? Is it numbing? Does it spread? Is it warm? Is it cold? What triggers it? Not just oh, it just hurts, but it's when I bend, it's when I sit in the car, it's when I stand up, it's when I reach for the peanut butter. These are all very important things to help somebody assist you to get over your injuries. I've adopted that when my clients come in for the first time and we're doing their evaluation, I tell them this is going to be a very successful endeavor with the two of us, as long as you can come in and tell me how your body's feeling. So if you work with me, every single time you come in, I ask, how's your body doing? And I used to get fine all the time. And it was driving me crazy. So I started just prefacing it with saying, I never want to hear the word fine out of your mouth because it doesn't help me at all. So now I still get some kids and adults too that say, oh, good. I'm like, great. I'm glad you're feeling good. Can you use a different word? Can you use something to describe? And most of the time, things come out that they're like, well, yeah, I feel good, but actually my low back has been bothering me, or my calf actually, I feels fine, but it's been kind of bothering me. And I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. Now we can do something about that. So when you get injured, whether it's small or big, being able to talk about it and say something right away. We hold on to our injuries way too long as dancers. We're used to being sore, but there is a difference between being sore and being injured, or sore and having a pain. And I realize if you're young or if you've never experienced that, sometimes it's like, is this okay that I'm experiencing this? And parents, I know your kids are coming to you saying this hurts, and you're like, is it something I should be taking care of, or is it just a small ache and pain? I totally get that. But here's my guideline. If it lasts more than 2 days or it comes back, you got to go get it checked out. That's a pain. That's not just a muscle soreness. So that's where I needed to start with my hip. I let it go for almost a year, guys. A year. Another reason that if I had just taken initiative, I could have probably saved myself and been dancing longer than I was. I was in Israel when this happened, and part of it was a very intensive time. I did not speak Hebrew well. I didn't know who to go to. But bottom line is that I didn't take accountability and say, hey, something's wrong. I just kept dancing through the pain. So when you do decide that it's time to go find somebody, if you've been listening to this podcast, and if you continue to listen to this podcast, you're going to hear a lot about active care. I am not talking about active care because I think it's trendy. I am talking about active care because I have lived it. I have lived working through extreme injuries that literally took me out of my profession, that I sought passive care, and it did not help. So when you keep hearing these words, when you hear people on this podcast that are talking about active care, being more involved in your quote rehab, depending on who you're going to, if you're at a doctor or a trainer, it's because we know it works. Evidence is showing it, science is showing it, and then all of us who are on here, and I'm the big driver of this, is that is my experience. That's why I'm in the field that I'm in, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. So when I hurt my hip, I didn't do anything for a year. Great. Good job, Allie. I sought out a chiropractor that came recommended by somebody who honestly had probably never had very many injuries. And that's fine. But now I say when you have a severe injury and you want to find the people who've made it through and gotten back to where they want to be, those are the people you want to listen to. Over like Joe Blow down the street that's like, oh, I have a great chiropractor. No offense, chiropractor, but they probably haven't experienced the pain that you are experiencing. That's a good guide, parents, for where you're looking at. Also talking to professionals who work with the sport that you are in, whether that's dance or another sport with your kids, or even parents, whatever you're doing. If you have coworkers that are experiencing the same pain as you, and they've successfully gone through and come out the other side, that would be a great person to ask. So I found this chiropractor, and she was wonderful, very sweet. She was a great adjuster. I will say that. Still one of the best adjustments that I've ever gotten. She did a little bit of tissue work. She did some stem work, and then that was pretty much it. So I did that for almost a year. I was going in 3 times a week for the first month, and then I'd go down to 2 for the 6 or 7 months. And she would work on me. I would feel a little bit better when I stood up. And so it felt encouraging. Yes, this is what we want. We want to feel those small successes when we do something that guides us in the direction of knowing that we're doing something right for our bodies, or that it's a positive change. And then I would get in the car and I'd stand up again, and the pain was back full force. So I did this for a year. She was a lovely person. I felt good while she was adjusting me. I got tissue work, which was lovely because who doesn't like a massage? And it was a great office. Everyone was really sweet. But I did it for a year. So when I say to you guys that you should see a difference in a week or 2 working with a doctor or a sports chiropractor or physician, I mean it. And it's because I've done the opposite. So when I finally found another chiropractor, a sports medicine chiropractor, who's going to be on this podcast. He's actually the office that I ended up working in right now. When I found him and I finally gave in to working a different way than I was used to, I saw huge changes quickly. Now, for him, that he didn't adjust me. I think he's adjusted me 3 or 4 times in the now 6 years that we've known each other. So that's just to say that adjustments are a tool. They are not the only answer. So I found that he helped me with my labrum tear. 90% got me back to 100% from what 10% was by never laying a hand on me. I think that your passive tools, massage, stem, adjustments, heat, ice, these are all tools that complement active care. If they are done as the only solution, my experience, and I see over and over, is they do not work. They do not work long term. You stand up, you feel better, your endorphins are going, maybe they've done a little bit of release and something feels better, but then you go back into your daily life and you haven't changed the movement pattern or the habit that then is creating the issue, and you end up going into these people twice a week, 3 times a week. They keep you for a lifetime because they haven't taken care of the underlying issue. They are treating the symptoms. And just think of it like when you get a cold, you can take I'm not going to cough. You take a cough drop and it helps you not cough in the moment, but you still have to get your immune system back up and you still have to treat the underlying problem of your cough and cold. Otherwise, you're going to be eating cough drops for the rest of your life to just try not to cough in daily life. So fast forward to 2 years ago when I hurt my back and this year when I hurt my back. And it was a completely different story. I knew right away that what I needed was active care, exercises. It had proven in my body that the best results that I had gotten were from active care. So I trusted Dr. Gonzalez fully, and I said, do what you do. And that's the wonderful thing about finding a sports medicine chiropractor or physician that you love and trust and that you've built that trust with. So when something does happen, and let me tell you guys, let me tell you parents, when you are in excruciating pain or even just severe pain, all logic goes out the window completely. So the things that we did for my herniated disc in the first little bit, which I'm going to get into, the things that we did for that first little bit, I know you need to do. I'm not a doctor, but I have seen this done for 6 years working in this clinic and knowing Dr. Gonzalez. I have seen it happen. I've seen it work. I've studied it. I've read about it. I know what needs to happen. It happened to me and I was paralyzed. I couldn't think. I couldn't make a rational thought. And I knew that right when I had herniated a disc, that the first 24 hours, 48 hours were going to be really painful, but I had to do certain things. And Dr. Gonzalez stood above me and had to talk me through getting into certain motions. It was insane because in the back of my brain, I was like, I know I need to do this, but I was in so much pain that I was like, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this. So finding that person who you can trust explicitly and say, I'm going to do whatever you say, even though I hurt, even though I'm not sure what's going on. Because the honest truth is we don't know what's going on. That's why we seek out professionals, right? So we want to find those people that we trust and that take us right into exercises of sorts to heal our stuff. So through my whole back stuff, it wasn't until 3 weeks into this last injury that it was then like, okay, let's get you past this next little hump and we're going to do a little bit of passive care. But 99.99999% of my care that got me back out of these herniated discs and that got it happening quickly was from prescribed exercises from the professional and from moving and walking with care and, of course, avoiding certain motions. So when you find that person, they're going to be able to tell you what to do and what not to do. Because, of course, there are bad, quote, bad motions you don't want to do when you're injured, whatever that is. If it hurts for you to flex your ankle, maybe we do need to avoid that for a while, but there are other things that you can do. If it hurts your back to round forward, we don't want to round forward, but we could move the other way. So having that professional there to guide me was a huge difference. And this is 100% without a doubt sharing why I am so on board with active care versus passive care. Now, I said in those first few days, we started doing exercises, certain things that Dr. Gonzalez calls first aid. So you think if you get a cut or a big gash on your hand, there's certain things that you just know to do right away. You're going to clean it out. You're going to put some Neosporin or antibacterial on it. You're going to cover it up with a Band-Aid, and you're going to do that for the next few days. You're going to keep it clean. You're going to keep changing the Band-Aid, and you do certain things to make sure that you get to a certain healing point. That's exactly the same with every single injury, whether it's a small one or a big one. There are certain movements, practices, activities that we can consider first aid, and those make a huge difference in getting you out of what I call a flare. So, example, when I hurt my hip, what I realized 2 years in when I started working with Dr. Gonzalez was that I took care of my grandma at that point. 4 days a week, I was a caregiver to her, and she was in a wheelchair. So pushing the wheelchair, leaning into it at that small angle forward, I would always be in so much pain whenever we went to the mall. I remember we'd always walk around this big indoor mall that she loved here, and my hip always hurt so bad. Like, I remember calling my mom and almost wanting to cry, like, I'm out with grandma and my hip hurts so bad. And it wasn't until we started evaluating what movements in life were causing it, not just, oh, sucks, your labrum's torn. Oh, man, too bad. But okay, what's actually causing these pains? And then also having someone whose knowledge was like, well, this is where your tear is. This is what's going to be aggravating. What are you doing in life that could aggravate it? We found that forward angle and that tip of my pelvis was exactly where my tear was and was causing all of this pain. And there was no way for me to get over the injury because I was literally rubbing it and causing inflammation and causing more tearing every time I pushed the wheelchair. As soon as I figured that out, I focused on standing up straight and pushing the wheelchair almost like I was pushing it with my hips, not with my upper body. Pain went away. It was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So those first aid moments that should have happened right when I had hurt myself with my hip, but didn't, so we did them 2 years later, made a huge difference. With my back, there were certain exercises that are proven to work for herniated disc, which is what I had. So I knew from the first time that they worked. And this time we had a kind of interesting experience because this had happened before, and I knew that I had to do certain exercises to get to a certain point where then I could start rebuilding normal movement habits on top. This meant a lot of time on the ground on my stomach, kind of prepped up in like a cobra in yoga, or you imagine like laying on your stomach and then pushing your hands so your upper body comes off the floor. And then certain exercises that build back up the torso strength. So the belly, the sides, and the back. Guys, I couldn't do these. My back was hurt so bad that exercises that you quote should be able to do with this back injury, I couldn't do at all for days. And what I found is that I had to get through this little hump, and only having worked with a professional would I have been able to get through the hump. I have said that if I didn't have this ability to reach out to Dr. Gonzalez, I would have had to call 911 to get like through that first day, because I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do anything. I literally, once I got down to the floor, crawled for 3 days, guys. So if I didn't have access to a professional, I would have had to call 911. That's the bottom line. And I am in my 20s. That's kind of a scary thought, to be like, wow, I can't imagine it. It seems like something that you do as an elderly person. You know, you fall and you can't get up and you have to call 911. But I'm 29 and was at that spot. So we started doing these first aid movements, and what we found this time, and what I am just kicking myself for not having done, is worked more on getting rid of the inflammation. Now, this is a specific to me, but here's where I'm kicking myself. I know that I have a anti-inflammatory product that I love. It's plant-based. It works on cleaning the blood, getting rid of the proteins that cause some discomfort and can cause things in the joints. And it's proven itself over and over, as I have used it myself and then also recommended it to dancers, athletes, parents, elderly, everyone, that when used regularly, they get rid of their inflammation. I've had people say their pains went away. And even dancers say that they didn't have to take ibuprofen the entire Nutcracker season. So I started taking this stuff lightly, like 2 a day. And 3 weeks in, I went and got a second opinion because I wasn't getting over the hump that I needed. And he said, I just think your inflammation is too high for you to be healing. You need to go do a steroid pack we need to go get you to the doctor. And I didn't want to do that unless I absolutely had to. And I had kind of the little revelation the day before, like, why ding dong Allie, had you not been taking this product that you know works at like the highest level possible? So on the bottle it says, if you're in an injury, a severe thing, you can take up to this certain amount every single hour. And I wasn't doing that because I was in pain and my brain was not thinking clearly. So I knew I had already started doing this, and I said, give me 24 hours to use this one product. And in 24 hours, if I am not immensely better, I will go get a steroid pack or whatever they were recommending, because I realized that we're now in a severe situation where I have to get rid of this inflammation. So I did it for 24 hours and I was like a new person. So again, I'm just kicking myself because I know this. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've seen it with my clients. And being in the injury let my brain go into something else, and I needed somebody to tell me what to do. The other thing that I now have as part of my first aid experience, again, whether it's a little injury or a big injury, is a CBD fluid, not a CBD oil, but a fluid. There's a big difference, and I'll just really quick say that if you know anything about CBD or you don't, you can go onto my Instagram and there's a little tile in the highlight that I talk about this, because it's been a big part of my recovery and that kind of stuff. But it was a huge difference, and there's something to be said for oils versus a fluid. So if you are interested in learning more about that, that's not what this podcast is about, so I'm not going to jump into it. But that was a huge part of my first aid experience also. And what I found in that first aid realm is that it was really easy to kind of get stuck in a rut. I had gotten exercises that were helping. And like anything, if you do too much of something, you eat too much of something, you experience too much of something, it's not good for you. So doing those exercises too much or too long, not letting them change and evolve with where my physicality was, started to create little issues in other areas. So that was another reason that injuries can last longer is you go in and see somebody and you get prescribed exercises and then you don't go back for 2 weeks and your injury evolves and you start causing more harm than good by doing those same exercises. So a big part of getting out of the first aid place of an injury is making sure that you're checking in with your professional often and that they should be changing your exercises if it's appropriate as you move and go through this process. So this time when I hurt my back, I actually took voice notes this time because I thought, dang it, Allie, this has happened twice. This is not good. Like, it's really not good. This is very serious. I'm making light of it, but it's very serious that I've done this twice. I have to change something so that this doesn't happen again. 1, I'm too young for this stuff to happen. And 2, this should not happen to anyone more than once. So there's some serious things to change. And it was very frustrating because it had happened 2 years prior. I had spent the 2 years working my butt off to be physically healthy. Diet changes, the exercises I did, the regularity in which I did certain exercises, and that I treated my body, sleep went up, all these things. And yet it still happened. What I found though, or what I've thought about for myself is that there's a mental side of it that we can't ignore when we get injured. Our identities get wrapped up in what we do in life well. So for dancers, our identity ends up being that we can do this many pirouettes, that we are the ballerina or the dancer, that you have this many people on Instagram, that you can do this or this or this. You're known at school as a dancer. This applies though to the job you have, being a mother or a father, being a certain type of person that your friends know you as. And when something happens that takes that away, it's like the earth drops out from underneath you. I experienced that when I hurt my hip. I've experienced it a little bit with each back injury I've had. I shared in episode 1 that when I hurt my hip, I went into a depression that I didn't even realize I was in until I got out of it. It's a very shaking thing to experience injuries like this. And if you are somebody who's in that, you just know that there is time and a way out. And if you're watching someone in your life go through this, just know that it's very difficult to feel like something that was so near and dear to you is gone. Even if it's not gone forever, it can feel like the end of the world. I have a couple clients who've had pretty severe injuries that have been out of dance for several months, and they've come to me when they're injured, so I know them in a certain way. And when they got back into dance, it was like they were a different person almost instantly. I was like, oh, this is the person I've been waiting to see. I didn't even realize because I didn't know them before their injury, but it was a huge switch when you get back into the thing that you feel like is your identity. So my advice for myself, and I have to say, this is where I've done things well this time, is do the things that you can do. I think often I get clients, dancers, friends who will call me or come in and see me and say, oh, I hurt my knee, I can't do anything. Or my shoulder hurts, I can't do anything. It's like, well, that's not true. That's absolutely not true. It looks different than what you were doing, but you can do things. So when you are injured is the perfect time to be seeing your active care professional and to be working on other things. Somebody with an ankle injury, I have kids, unfortunately, that twist their ankles on dancing on point or whatever they're doing, jumping, landing. And their moms will call me and say, oh, I'm so sorry she can't come in. She twisted her ankle. And I'm like, no, this is the perfect time to come in. This is absolutely when you should come in. I'm not going to push her ankle, but we can do so many things. We can do groundwork. We can do sitting work. We can do weights. We can do all of these things that are going to make your injury progress faster because you didn't digress in your other things. So when something's injured, don't fall into the trap of, oh, I can't do anything. I can't go to dance. I can't go to my Pilates. I can't go to my trainer. That's absolutely not true. There might be cases, I will clarify, there might be cases that you shouldn't be dancing and that maybe it doesn't work for you to go to dance that first week, but you can get so much out of still going to class. And I can tell you that there has honestly, truly never been a time that I've had somebody injured that I have said, no, don't come into me. They get to make the call in the end. So I've told people, no, I think you should come. And they've said, no, I don't want to. And that's fine. That's their choice. But we have so much that we can work on. And that is something that I did well with this back injury. I set my alarm every 15 minutes to do the things that I could do. Even when I was on the floor, only crawling, I would crawl to the stairs and back. That's it. That's all I could do. And I would set my alarm for every 15 minutes because I knew it was important to move. And that was, again, what was prescribed by the doctor. Move as much as possible in a way that feels okay. So don't give up on the things that you feel like, I don't know, like I'm hurt. Maybe I can't do this. Do the things you can. And if you don't know what you can do, reach out to a professional who can help you figure out the things that you can do. A big part for me of being injured and not being able to do the things that I love is finding new things I can do just for the time being. And some of my best hobbies or loves have come from having to find something else that kind of fuels me for a period of time. So if you can't dance or you have an injury that's stopping you from spinning or running or whatever you do, find hobbies, things around the house, things out of the house that you can do. Maybe you're a runner and you can't run, but you can walk. Go for walks. Once I got to the spot where I could walk, I knew that walking for my back was a huge rehab tool that I had to utilize. So I made that podcast time. I went on the slowest walk you might have ever seen at the beginning, but I walked for 2 hours pushed together. And when I would get tired, I would take a resting position that was good for my back and I would rest and then I would be able to go farther. So I didn't let the little small hurdles get in my way. I stayed active, I got out, and these are things that I did well. So I suggest that you guys find these things you can do well. And that might include being with your friends and having people around you that are positive and happy and experiencing great things in life, because like I mentioned, it can feel all consuming when you have an injury and your identity is wrapped up in that injury preventing you from doing things. And lastly, huge believer in making obtainable goals. With this back injury, perfect example, my goal the first couple days was to literally get up every 15 minutes and crawl. That was it. Then it was to be able to make it down the stairs because I was on the second level. And then it was to walk around my green belt. And then it was to walk outside of the complex. And then a big jump I made, but I knew I had to, is I had to be in Nashville for work in a month. And I knew I had to be able to sit on the plane and I had to sleep in a foreign bed and I had to make it all the way through the conference. So my daily activities added up to me getting to Nashville. Now that I'm not in Nashville, my goals are a little bit broader, but that still means there's micro goals. That means that I know I have to be doing something every day for myself and that my eating has to reflect that, and that I have a little bit bigger picture in this, that I need to be working with a trainer, have some outside help also. So make those goals small things that you can accomplish that build up to the big goal of being back and healthy. When we get to that big goal, let's say that it's returning to dance. This is not something that you do on your own. It really isn't. As I just said, I hired a trainer. And I think that the smartest people have trainers. So we can't do things on our own. Remember I said that all logic went out the window, even though I knew what to do and I knew what to take and I just didn't do it. The logic left me. You need somebody to tell you what to do. I need someone to tell me what to do when my body is in crisis. And that's what is happening when you're in an injury. And when we're getting back, it's really easy to miss little things in your body, even if you know. And what I see is that most of us don't know. We don't know. That's not your area of expertise. Everyone has their talents in life and the thing that they excel at. And this is why we search out experts in other fields. Don't be ashamed of that. Do it. It's excellent. If I want to learn more about sleep, I find somebody who has really studied it. When I want to know more about how to up my weights and see certain gains, I find an expert. When I need to go to the doctor for a flu, then you go to the doctor for the flu. You don't go to your neighbor, right? When my car is broken, I go to the mechanic. I don't try to fix it myself. I know nothing about that. So we do this all the time in different areas. We find experts. I think though sometimes when it comes to our body, we think, oh, it's my body, I know. And you do know, and you do need to listen to your body, but we get to seek out that extra help to get you where you want to go. Being patient is a huge part of this. The reason I say reach out to somebody and have somebody assist you is that there is a big mental block once you've been injured. When you injure yourself, even when you just stub your toe, your brain sends a signal that it feels the pain in your toe. And then your brain says, ooh, I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to avoid that movement so that my toe doesn't hurt again. When you tweak your neck, your shoulder, your back, your body, you might be fine, but your brain says, ooh, don't do that again. Let's move over to the left a little bit so that that doesn't happen again. Then you find a new normal over here on the left, but that new normal is no longer your best position for the health of your body. And you start creating habits and we get injured based off of that movement. So when you injure yourself, your brain has this almost fear mechanism that kicks in and keeps you from moving the way you should. This is why you work with a professional, work with a trainer, work with a sports medicine person, because if you look on my Instagram, you will see videos of people like squatting where they shift over to one side. They're not shifting on purpose, guys. They're trying to be straight, but their brain, because of an injury or something that's happened in their past, has made them adapt to be over to the left. And when I tell them and move them, I'm like, oh, you're over here. They go, no, that's not center. Yes, that's center. And then we have to do corrective exercises that then rebalance everything in their body so that they go back into the middle. But I can't do that on my own. I still have in the office. I love it. Sometimes when there's an extra time and there's a doctor or a trainer in here, I'm like, hey, look at my squat. Make sure I'm in the middle. Especially now as I am in this phase. I was just working out with one of the doctors this week, and she said to me, Allie, your chin is so far forward. And I said, no, oh, really? It feels so straight. And then I pulled my head back and I felt like I did this huge chin retraction, and it wasn't that big, but it made a huge difference. All of a sudden, my lifting felt better. My movements felt better. And she had to stand there, guys, and be like, chin, chin, pull it back, chin. I know that stuff. If you work with me, we talk about your chin all the time. I know it, but I needed assistance for somebody else to help me get past the brain connection that had kind of suffered from an injury. And there is a huge part of fear movements that we have to get past. And I see it every day. When you have experienced an injury, your body remembers it and your brain remembers it. So I was deadlifting just this other day with this doctor, and I told her, I was like, I can lift this weight. This is no problem. My back's not hurting, but I feel my body going every time I'm about to pick it up because I'm fearful that my back is going to hurt, even though I know at this point I've done the work. I'm feeling stronger. This is where I need to be. There's a mental aspect of it. So having her there coaching me, making sure that every little thing is being done correctly so that I can trust her to trust my body, basically, until my body can gain that trust back with itself. It's a huge part. And the last thing I want to tie into this, which this makes me sound a little bit like a Downy Brownie, and I don't mean it this way, but when you are injured, you should expect flares. I don't mean that you're going to be injured for the rest of your life, but my experience, what I see with my body and with myself is if I do not treat my body like the injury it had, then I end up injuring myself again. So let me clarify with that. For example, with my hip, I did everything I knew. I did all the passive care. I did gyrotonic. I did Pilates. I did yoga. I did Tai Chi. I swam. I ran. I did it all searching for the thing that made me feel the best. And there were things that helped a little bit. But do you guys know what the biggest thing was that helped me? It was lifting weights. And it was scary because I had not lifted weights at that point. I was a dancer. I was told they make you bulky, which is big hoo-ha and totally not true. But it was a challenge to get into. But once I felt better, I now know there are certain things that I have to do on the regular so that my hip doesn't hurt. And as I got out of that injury, it started out that I would go like a couple days without major pain. And then I would have, I call it a flare. Then I would have a flare. Then after a bit, I would go a week without pain. And then I'd have a flare. And it would last a while. Then I got to the point where it was months without pain. And then I'd have a flare that lasted a few weeks. And it was bad. They would hurt. Then it started to switch where I would have long periods of time without pain. And then my flares were starting to get smaller. So I started to go to the point where it was like I went a year without any pain because I was doing the work. And then I would have a very small flare that would remind me, and it always happened when I was not doing my stuff. The stuff that I knew I had to do to make my body feel better. And at this point, the last time I had any pain in my hip was over 2 years ago. Even going through all this back stuff that has, it crossed my mind, oh shoot, I can't do the exercises that I normally do to keep my hip healthy. But even through those times, I was able to keep it. And you know what I think it is, guys, is I kind of refer to this as your banking system. So the more good things that you put into your body, the more healthy foods you eat, the foods that build you up, the exercises that build you up, the sleep you get, you're depositing into your bank account of your body. So that when you do make a little debit, when you do take something out, you eat something that you know is not going to build you up, but it's okay to eat that little piece of cake on your birthday. That's totally fine. That's great. It's okay to miss a day of exercise if your bank account is high enough that your body won't suffer from it. So this really for you and me is the deposit of good habits so that when my back went out and I herniated a disc, it didn't wreck the rest of my body. I had deposited it enough that it definitely depleted. I have to do a lot of work to deposit back to get it up there, but I didn't end up in pain in my hip because I hadn't built that up enough. So if you've sprained an ankle, you guys have to do your exercises multiple times a week, even after your ankle feels better. A lot of the time, the spot that you have pain is not the spot that actually needs to be built up and strengthened, which is why you see a professional. But just know that you have to treat your body like you are going to put in those deposits so that when something happens, and it does, you're okay. But until that deposit gets high enough, when you do have a flare, it's going to push you down. I had a dancer who had a big back injury, and she had a big flare this summer right before she was supposed to go somewhere, and it was devastating for her. She really went below the baseline. So we're talking now she's in debt here. And that was a huge learning lesson for her because life had gotten busy right before her flare happened. She stopped doing her exercises. She had not deposited enough good behaviors into her body bank account. So when she stopped doing them, she dropped below the zero. And I don't think she'll ever quite do it like that again. So it's a good lesson. And so that's not a negative comment, guys. I don't want you to think you're always going to be in pain, but you do have to treat your body like that bank system. Deposit so that when you deplete it, it doesn't drop below the zero. So that was my back injury and hip injury in a really small nutshell. It's funny. I am not a big sharer in life. I don't talk a lot about things that are going on in my life. I like to talk about the positive things, and I'm a really good question asker. So after I recorded the first podcast, I actually had close friends or friends I grew up with who reached out and were like, I had no idea that you went through that stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess so. Like, I kind of just deal with things to myself. So it's bizarre to me to still be like, I'm going to share about my back injury. I'm going to share about not being able to stand up and having to crawl. But I feel like this is the time and place, and that this information is shared to assist you guys to make better decisions than I did, and to excel in the thing that you're working towards, whether that's dance or being a healthy adult, being a good mom or dad, being great at your job, pursuing some type of crazy athletic endeavor, whatever it is. I'm hoping that these small little nuggets are something that can resonate with you and make a better decision in the future. So let's real quick go over the things that I talked about. I said that number 1, you get to seek active care over passive care. Number 2 was respect the first aid process. That meant getting rid of the inflammation. I talked about that anti-inflammatory plant-based product that I love. I will link it in the show notes if you want to find that. And then the CBD also. If you can also find it if you're interested at alignfitnessbyali.com/nutrition. I like to put the things that I use there, so you guys can find them there if you want. And we talked about getting out of the rut of making sure that you don't get stuck in exercises that then make more injuries because you didn't progress them enough. Number 3 was the mental state. Acknowledging that there is a huge mental component to this, and you have to try to get yourself out of it, and that people around you, if you have people in your life that can assist you with this, which we all do if we reach out, that's a great place to do it. And making goals for yourself. Make obtainable goals that you can reach. That will do a huge thing for you to get out of your mental slump if you make these little goals and you acknowledge that you reach them, and you're going to go for the next one and the next one. Number 4 is when you're returning back to your activity, we're making sure that we still have help during this time, and that we get that help so that we don't get stuck in a new pattern that can then hurt us down the road. And lastly was we can expect that we are going to be doing this stuff for the rest of our life, and just love and embrace it. Make it part of your routine. Make it something you love. Go for it. Embrace it. Don't hate on it. Just do it. It's so worth it to feel healthy, especially if you've had an injury that's taken you out of the life that you want to live. It is so worth you guys doing 5 to 10 minutes of stuff every day to make sure that your life is the life that you want. So if you guys have any comments, you can always reach out to me at info@alignfitnessbyali.com. I would love to hear any ahas that you had. You can also put them on Instagram, on my most recent post. Just share your ahas of what you learned from this episode, and maybe injuries that you've dealt with. If you have another way that you like to deal with injuries, I would love to hear it. I'm always trying to add to my bag, and I'm sure that will assist someone else in our little Align Fitness family to get over their injuries and be their strong, healthy, thriving dancer self also. So thank you guys for joining me today. It's been wonderful. I will see you all next week here on Beyond the Point.